Okay, the cross of love. Selfless love, the top of the vertical element of the cross, and at the bottom, at the more earthly part, you have eros, or erotic and sensual love. Okay? So, now, men need to be warmed from the outside in. That is, a man is basically a sensualist, which is why he loves his toys and his adrenaline jacks. He likes to get out there and really get pumped up and, and he goes nuts over sexy-looking women. And, of course, what defines sexy-looking women comes from culture, and our culture's got fallen eros in it. And so he thinks sexy-looking women have to be a certain way, and, of course, it's a terrible thing to do to women. And young girls. I mean, everybody knows these issues. That's why we have fallen eros and why we have to redeem eros. We have to lift it up, and as much as people would like to pass a law, you can't really do it. It's one individual at a time. You, man or woman that's watching this, you have to introduce these new things into it. So, I said earlier that women really need to learn to be lovers of men. Well, how do they do this? Well, this woman once said to me, and I'm not going to say much about anything to give the identity of her, but this was part of how I got my understanding of things. She said, women need to be whorish in bed, she said. Okay? Well, think about that a little. Don't judge it, just what she's saying. And that's out there, You've got people teaching women to pole dance, and you do have a lot of things where women are taught to dress very erotically, and not to be afraid of their sexuality, and to wear high heels and stockings and clinging dresses and show a lot of cleavage and all the other things that women are encouraged to do. It gets a little sick when we encourage 9-year-old girls to do it. That's not very good, and it can be excessive, There's all kinds of excess out there. But the idea, why is that the way it is? Well, one way to understand what men want is to watch pornography. And I don't mean sit there and, watch the whole movie or anything. You go to a good pornography website, like X-Hamsters, for example, which is disgusting. It's gotten worse and worse and worse. But you go there and you don't look at the pictures on the right side of the screen. You look at the list on the left side of the screen. And the list is of different kinds of videos that you can watch, which have these different aspects of what's involved. They're going to show you anal and I don't know what all, It's an awful list in a certain kind of way because we know that's a lot of that subjugation and dominance element that men can get into with women, and it's awful that men get into it. That's not love. Dominance is not love, but love is communion with, not dominance over. And of course, if you get into my writings about change in Western civilization and the collapse of it, that's what's happening. The dominance over, the patriarchal thing is disappearing, and the communion with element, the mother forces are coming back, and it's a big spiritual transformation at the level of culture. And if people were paying attention to it, the new atheists, for example, they would be amazed that this goes on, because science, with its ideas of it's all matter and no spirit, can't explain anything that's going on in the world today. But it's possible to explain all of it with a spiritual set of spiritual conceptions. But anyway, we're talking about warming the man from the outside in. He warms by the fact that the woman understands that he is capable of being intoxicated. Now that's the warming. He's capable of being intoxicated by her presentation of herself to his senses. Okay? It's how she looks. It's how she smells. It's what she tastes like. It's what she says. So for a woman to be whorish in bed means she talks dirty. And of course we call it dirty because we have this Victorian thing from our past. You read literature out of Asia, for example, and nobody's got any problem with this stuff. And of course, it doesn't need to be public, you know. We don't need to put it in people's faces in movies and on TV and stuff like this. That's a sign of the excess. But women, if they want to love their man and love them selflessly, need to understand that he needs more than just to get inside her and have an orgasm. Think about this for a minute, just as an example. And it's a thing that can be done both by anybody in the partnership, okay? The biggest sense organ is the skin. It covers the whole body. That's why we rub ourselves against each other when we're having sex. The sensuality of it is just enormous. It goes on and on and on, you know. And in the dumb things that get said by the boys who talk about sex is they'll tell you about, well, you got to touch this erogenous zone and get to base, fourth base, and touch this and do that and da 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 da. Well, all of that is got a little bit of truth to it, so that's the way it works. But basically, as I said before, you warm the woman up from the inside. She needs to know that you really care about her, and not just want her. That's important too, to be desired, but that you care about her, you know. Touch. Okay, here's my arm. Now there's lots of different ways to touch, okay? You can touch like that. And you can, with your partner, you can say, well, touch me all over that way with just one finger. And of course, you lie there and you let yourself experience what it's like to be touched that way. Okay? And there is a kind of pleasure that comes from being touched that way. Or be blown on. Very light touch. Okay? And it makes a difference which parts of the body are touched that way. You know, it doesn't have to be rough. Squeeze, squeeze, squeeze. Although you can sort of do both, you know. Imagine you're laying down with your partner and they're on their front in bed with you. And you're lying on your side with your kind of head, you're propped up, and you're lying on your side, and you're reaching out with your hand, and you're touching, you know. And you experiment. You experiment touching with one finger, and thinking about how that's going to feel to them. And later you have them do that to you, see? This is an experimental understanding of things. You get together and you experiment, okay? And experimentation and variety is not just about positions and stuff like that. Although some of those older manuals about eroticism have some sense to them, it's just not all the different positions. It's much deeper and much more profound than that. Okay, now another way to touch is to touch for your own pleasure. In other words, it's not what you're trying to make them feel, it's what you feel in your hand when you're touching them. It's your feeling of the touch of them. You know, you rub your hand over them. Now these are experiments in sensuality, okay? We need this sensuality. We need to understand the sensuality. And I seem to run out of time here, so I'm going to have to stop. Come back.